Not so long ago, I remember hearing about a song called Don't Stay in School, and it was created by an artist named David Brown, otherwise known as Boy in a Band. And in that song, he describes the various things that we don't learn in school. One of the things that he touched on in that song was our 30 basic human rights, and how many of us don't even know them. After a little while, I decided to do some investigation, some research to figure out what exactly are our 30 basic human rights. Where do they come from? Who created them? And are they even legally binding? That's kind of what this video is, and I want to go through each and every single one so that people have the basic understanding of what they are, when they were created, who they were created by, and who's actually enforcing these kind of basic human rights. Never mind the fact that they've been around for about 50, 60, even 70 years, but also the fact that the video that was created, the Don't Stay at School, was about 3, maybe even 4 or 5 years ago. I'm not quite sure which, but it was a wee while ago. I think it was 2013. So I should have probably figured this out a lot sooner. But lots of people don't like reading, so I figured I would summarize it so that everyone else has the ability to understand it. But before we get into it, I want to do a little background of the document itself, where it was created, how it was created, and the reasonings for it. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights, or UDHR for short, was a document that was proclaimed by the United Nations General Assembly at the time. It was brought into function at the 10th of December 1948, and it was created to set out for the very first time humanity's basic human rights. The creation of the document was simply forward in response to the horrendous things that humanity has done to each other over several millennia, multiple millennia. You know, and our entire history is warfare, destruction, cruelty to each other. And a lot of good things as well, a lot of nice things, you know, like reducing poverty, reducing, you know, taking on the Nazis, all that kind of stuff. You know, there were a lot of good things to come out of all of this as well. Not to say that humanity is totally screwed, but humanity has done a lot of good things as well. So don't make this as, you know, me dissing humanity. We just are, we've done a lot of bad things as well, you know. Which we still are working towards improving and all that jazz. But a few examples of the bad things that have happened is Mao, Stalin, Hitler, kings and emperors alike doing monstrous things to millions of people, which have, you know, resulted into a couple world wars, lots of different wars, civil wars, all that kind of stuff. The fact that there was a total disregard for human life. It just gave the United Nations an incentive to say, look, here are our basic rights, here's what we should be doing, and this is what everyone has the right to. But it's also why a lot of the laws we have today are very focused on freedoms. Freedom of speech, freedom of expression, freedom of religion, all that different kind of stuff. A lot of it is based on freedoms that we have in first world countries, like America, Europe, a lot of those different places. Although, to be fair, Europe is a little bit picky on freedom of speech and expression, sometimes even on freedom of religion. But specifically in Eastern countries, a lot of less freedoms, as you might have guessed. I know I'm going to get a lot of hate for it, but it is just a fact of reality, which is something that we should all be fighting to protect the basic human rights of everyone. But you'll see how the laws of our societies are actually integrated with a lot of the basic human rights that have been set out. And it's also a lot of the communications with other countries through diplomacy and peace and trade and all that kind of stuff, where a lot of these human rights are actually intertwined with international law. Now, it's not necessarily binding for a lot of countries, but it is something that has influenced a lot of the international communities, laws, countries, etc. So with that little bit of background, let's get into the 30 basic human rights. Article number 1, or right to equality. All human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights. They are endowed with reason and conscience and should act towards one another in a spirit of brotherhood. In a nutshell, this is basically just saying, hey, we're all human, we all have equality, we all should have equality, etc., etc., etc. It's fairly straightforward. It's just saying we have the right and the ability to be treated equally. That's basically it, regardless of who or where you're from. Article number 2, freedom from discrimination. Everyone is entitled to all the rights and freedoms set forth in this declaration, without distinction of any kind, such as race, color, sex, language, religion, political or other opinion, national or social origin, property, birth, or other status. Furthermore, no distinction shall be made on the basis of the political, jurisdictional, or international status of the country or territory to which a person belongs, whether it be independent, trust, non-self-governing, or under any other limitation of sovereignty. What this basically means is everyone has the right to not be discriminated upon, no matter whatever differences we all have. Article number 3, right to life, liberty, and personal security. Everyone has the right to life, liberty, and security of person. Honestly, this one kind of speaks for itself. We all have the right to life, and to live that life with freedom and security. Kind of self-explanatory, to be fair. A lot of these are actually quite simple, which makes this a hell of a lot easier to explain. Article number 4, freedom from slavery. No one shall be held in slavery or servitude. Slavery and the slave trade shall be prohibited in all their forms. Basically, again, very self-explanatory. No one has the right to enslave us, and we don't have the right to enslave anyone else, no matter the circumstances or whatever the case that may be. You know, don't do slavery, kids. Article number 5, freedom from torture and degrading treatment. No one shall be subjected to torture or to cruel, inhuman, or degrading treatment or punishment. Basically, again, very self-explanatory. Do not torture or subject someone to inhuman treatment, whatever the case may be. No one has the right to do it, and no one has the right to do it to you. Again, very self-explanatory, thankfully. Article number 6. Right to recognition as a person before the law. Everyone has the right to recognition everywhere as a person before the law. In other words, it's just a way of saying we have the right to use the laws that are in our countries and international law, just as anyone else is able to. So we have the right, you have the right, everyone has the right to use the laws in place as an individual. And no one has the right to remove that right from us. So no one's allowed to tell us, you're not allowed to use that law because it applies to everyone. Article number 7, right to equality before the law. All are equal before the law and are entitled without any discrimination to equal protection of the law. All are entitled to equal protection against any discrimination in violation of this declaration and against any incitement to such discrimination. This means that this law applies to everyone equally. No matter who you are, where you come from, the law that in the country that you're in, it applies to everyone equally, no matter who you are. Just as you and your neighbours obey the law, everyone else should, and it should respond to you equally. Article number 8, the right to remedy by competent tribunal. Everyone has the right to an effective remedy by the competent national tribunals for acts violating the fundamental rights granted him by the Constitution or by law. Basically, we have the rights to a trial, a fair trial, a competent trial. The law in and of itself is the same for all of us, and as such we have the right to a fair trial to prove our innocence or our guilt. We have the right by the law to have a fair trial. And if we feel we are being treated unequally or unfairly, we have the right to be treated fairly and equally, just as anyone who's been in a trial or a court case should have. Article number 9, freedom from arbitrary arrest and exile. No one shall be subjected to an arbitrary arrest, detention, or exile. Pretty much it just means that you have the right to not be arrested for no reason or sent from your country for no reason. There has to be a good reason for you to be imprisoned, for you to be exiled, for you to be arrested. There has to be a good reason. Good reason being key. It is why unlawful arrest is so badly looked upon and unlawful exile is extremely looked down upon by the entire global community, except for a few places. But I won't get into that here. Article number 10, a right to a fair public hearing. Everyone is entitled in full equality to a fair and public hearing by an independent and impartial tribunal, in the determination of his rights and obligations and of any criminal charge against him. This right is very similar to a few others, like the previous one, like not being arrested for any reason or the discrimination in a fair trial. And this is just key for any trial or court case. If a person is put on trial, it should be in public. There should be no kangaroo courts. There should be no secret courts. Unless, of course, it's something to do with, government secrets or something like that. That one kind of makes sense, but even still. And the people who are deciding if we are innocent or guilty, they should not be told by anyone else what to say. It has to be an impartial decision from the judge, the jury, and anyone else who is involved. We have a right, as a human being, to a fair and public open trial. Right number 11, the right to be considered innocent until proven guilty. Everyone charged with a penal offence has the right to be presumed innocent until proven guilty according to law in a public trial at which he has had all the guarantees necessary for his defence. No one shall be held guilty of any penal offence on account of any act or omission which did not constitute a penal offence, under national or international law at the time when it was committed. Nor shall a heavier penalty be imposed than the one that was applicable at the time the penal offence was committed. So, two things there. The first one, we all have the right to be innocent until proven guilty. So no matter what crime you're charged of, you have the right to prove your innocence, and you have the right to be innocent until you've been proven guilty. But yeah, this right basically is saying we have the right to be innocent until proven guilty. And we have the right to prove our innocence as well. The second part of that is actually very interesting. The second part of that basically states that if we are proven guilty, the punishment should not be any more than the required amount that was already set forth in the law. Article 12. Freedom from interference with privacy, family, home, and correspondence. No one shall be subjected to arbitrary interference with his privacy, family, home, or correspondence, nor to attacks upon his honour and reputation. Everyone has the right to the protection of the law against such interference or attacks. This is actually one that kind of surprises me that it's on the list. It makes sense that it's on the list, but it's something that's violated by everyday people all over the world for no reason whatsoever. I mean, if you look at paparazzi, if you look at like MTV, if you look at all these different things, even like the news, they go into people's personal lives to get information out of them, when in reality they don't actually have the right to do that, which is very interesting. Not to mention the fact to tarnish a family's name or a person's individual name, or to go through their private information that hasn't been released to the public. But basically it just means you can't go in, you don't have the right to go into someone's home, you don't have the right to bother their family, or go through their private information. Usually that's why there's things called things like subpoenas, or required information for court and the like. Article 13. Right to free movement in and out of the country. Everyone has the right to freedom of movement and residence within the borders of each state. Everyone has the right to leave any country, including his own, and to return to his country. This basically just means we have the right to go to any part of the country that we belong to. We have the right to go out of that country, and also to return to that country within our own free will. Just a side note to that one, you have to make sure that you are doing it legally. Article 14. Right to asylum in other countries from persecution. Everyone has the right to seek and to enjoy in other countries asylum from persecution. This right may not be invoked in the case of prosecutions genuinely arising from non-political crimes or from acts contrary to the purposes and principles of the United Nations. Simply put, if we're being mistreated in our country based on our laws or our cultural norms, or even the view of our beliefs, whatever they may be, we have the right to leave that country and to seek asylum to another country where it would be safe to live or to, be a basic human being. This right is a bit of a controversial one, as sometimes it is hard to determine who is genuinely fleeing persecution. In certain parts of the world, it is more cut and clear, like if someone was leaving from North Korea to live a basic life or to not be persecuted, even in places like China where a lot of religious people are being persecuted for this same thing. We have the right to leave that country to seek asylum in order to live our life with the freedoms that we have according to this document. Right number 15, right to a nationality and the freedom to change it. Everyone has a right to a nationality. No one shall be arbitrarily deprived of his nationality nor denied the right to change his nationality. I messed that one up, don't mind me. We all have the right to belong to a country, whatever the country may be, and typically speaking this is the one that you're born to, or if you have parents from another country, we generally have the right to go to that country to claim nationality through parents or a loved one, or whatever the case is. You have the right to become a national of another country if you choose to do so. There's a whole lot of hoops and things you have to go through in order to do that, but you still have the right to do it. Article 16. Right to marriage and family. Men and women of full age without any limitation due to race, nationality, or religion have the right to marry and to found a family. They are entitled to equal rights as to marriage, during marriage and at its dissolution. Marriage shall be entered into only with the free and full consent of intending spouses. The family is the natural and fundamental group unit of society and is entitled to protection by society and the state. This one is pretty straightforward, even though some of our laws have changed since, that document where same-sex couples can now marry in quite a lot of countries. But the fundamentals are still the same. We all have the right to marriage. We all have the right to found a family, have kids, etc. Or for other cases, it could be, adoption, or whatever the case is. Now, the third part of that is the family is the natural and fundamental group unit of society and is entitled to protection by society and the state. This one is very important because for a lot of societies to function, we kind of need a constant flow of children in order for the society to continue through the years or the decades. But it is a very important part because families do end up, creating the backbone of a society. That's kind of the case, whatever your family may be. Article 17, right to own property. Everyone has the right to own property alone as well as in association with others. No one shall be arbitrarily deprived of his property. I'm pretty glad so many of these are straightforward. Basically this says we all have the right to own property, and we all have the right to own it individually and with other people. So say you bought a house with, your partner or, your mother, your father, etc., or your friend. You all have the right to own things. Article 18, freedom of belief and religion. Everyone has the right to freedom of thought, conscience, and religion. This right includes freedom to change his religion or belief, and freedom, either alone or in community with others and in public or private, to manifest his religion or belief in teaching, practice, worship, and observance. This is also more commonly referred to as freedom of thought, which makes sense. It is the right of every person to have a faith or a belief that they choose to have, to say what we think and to communicate with others on the ideas of those beliefs and to exchange those ideas and beliefs with each other, whether in a public or a private setting. We all have the right to believe in something, to worship something, to create up our own mind about those things, which I guess is why it says freedom of belief and religion. we all have the right to have that, and no one has the right to take that away from us. Article 19, freedom of opinion and information. Everyone has the right to freedom of opinion and expression. This right includes freedom to hold opinions without interference and to seek, receive, and impart information and ideas through any media and regardless of frontiers. Every human being has the fundamental right to say what we like, think, and understand, and to share those ideas with other human beings. Alternatively, we have the basic right to look at the information and decide for ourselves, and to broadcast that information on any media we seem fit. This one is a bit of a controversial one because a lot of people think you can't say what you like. There are a lot of people being arrested for saying things on the internet, saying things out loud, all that kind of stuff. So it is, certain countries like America, it's a constitutional right, it's a constitutional liberty. In other countries like Ireland, England, etc., it's not so much, so you can actually get arrested for saying whatever you think. But obviously, that's for very controversial subjects, which I won't be getting into here because I live in Ireland. And I don't want to get arrested. Article 20, right of a peaceful assembly and association. Everyone has the right to freedom of peaceful assembly and association. No one may be compelled to belong to an association. This right allows us to meet where we like and have the right to meet with our friends, our colleagues, our family, our associates, and defend the rights that we have in peace. It also means that no one, not a government group or anyone else, has the right to make us join a group if we are unwilling to do so. But basically speaking, it just means that we have the right to fight for our rights in peace, peacefully, and we also have the right to not be compelled to belong to an association, whatever the case may be, if we're unwilling to do so. Article 21, right to participate in government and in free elections. Everyone has the right to take part in the government of his country directly or through freely chosen representatives. Everyone has the right to equal access to public service in his country. The will of the people shall be the basis of the authority of government. This will shall be expressed in periodic and genuine elections, which shall be the universal and equal suffrage, and shall be held by secret vote or by equivalent free voting procedures. This right is the fundamental right to allow us to vote and to choose who leads our country, whether and how they govern, in a sense. From the President, Prime Minister, their cabinet, the Houses of Parliament, etc., etc. Every human being has the right to decide who leads them and their country, and who represents them in their government. Article 22, right to social security. Everyone as a member of society has the right to social security and is entitled to realization through national effort and international cooperation and in accordance with the organization and resources of each state, of the economic, social, and cultural rights indispensable for his dignity and the free development of his personality. In other words, we all have the right to have enough money to live and the help for medical aid if we are ill or old. This includes, but it's not limited to, affordable housing, education, childcare, and enough money to live on, to have the very basic lifestyle. If we are, unable to work, we're unemployed, if we're sick, if we're old, disabled, whatever the case may be. Article 23, right to desirable work and to join trade unions. Everyone has the right to work, to free choice of employment, to just and favourable conditions of work, and to protection against unemployment. Everyone, without any discrimination, has the right to equal pay for equal work. Everyone who works has the right to just and favourable remuneration, ensuring for himself and his family an existence worthy of human dignity, and supplemented, if necessary, by other means of social protection. Everyone has the right to form and to join trade unions for the protection of his interests. But this one, just simply put, means we have the right to work. We have the right to work and to be treated with respect in that work. And we have the right to decent pay and not to be discriminated against in our workplace. We also have the right to form and join trade unions. Oftentimes they fight for, better standards, better pay, better work hours, better whatever the case may be. There are a lot of very common ones like builders or teachers or electricians. There's a lot of different trade unions, basically one for every single trade. Article 24, right to rest and leisure. Everyone has the right to rest and leisure, including reasonable limitation of working hours and periodic holidays with pay. If we are working, we have the right to rest, meaning things like holidays and paid leave, maternity leave, basically, so that we're able to relax and recuperate on those days. Article 25, right to adequate living standard. Everyone has the right to a standard of living adequate for the health and well-being of himself and of his family, including food, clothing, housing, and medical care and necessary social services, and the right to security in the event of unemployment, sickness, disability, widowhood, old age, or other lack of livelihood in circumstances beyond his control. Motherhood and childhood are entitled to special care and assistance. All children, whether born in or out of wedlock, shall enjoy the same social protection. As the right explains, we all have the right to a standard of living, to a well-being and good life. In particular are those that require extra care, such as those of the unemployed, the disabled, the infirm, and, in particular, mothers and of young children, whether the child is born inside or outside of marriage. The particular instance of mothers is due to the recovery period of new mothers and the extra care they need when fending for a new one, or their little ones, during the first few years of the child's life, which is totally understandable. Having a child physically can be very debilitating. And there's a lot of work and effort required to put in to take care of that child for the first couple of years. It does make sense that that's in particular, because at the same time, the children are the future of the next generation. They're the future of the society, of the democracy, of the republic, or whatever the case you live in. The children are the future, so it makes sense to have them with particular rights to care. Article 26, right to education. Everyone has the right to education. Education shall be free, at least in the elementary and fundamental stages. Elementary education shall be compulsory. Technical and professional education shall be made generally available, and higher education shall be equally accessible to all on the basis of merit. Education shall be directed to the full development of the human personality and to the strengthening of respect for human rights and fundamental freedoms. It shall promote understanding, tolerance, and friendship among all nations, racial or religious groups, and shall further the activities of the United Nations for the maintenance of peace. Parents have a prior right to choose the kind of education that shall be given to their children. In a nutshell, we all have the right to an education, and all primary education or elementary education for our American brothers and sisters should be free. That being said, all the schools of higher education should be equally gotten through the basis of merit, personal merit, not to be discriminated against or because of. And finally, the parents have a right to choose how their children are educated. Also, that we should, the other part in there that I missed was the, where was it? It shall promote understanding, tolerance, and friendship among all nations, races, racial or religious groups, and shall further the activities of the United Nations for the maintenance of peace. Basically saying, teach children about peace, that kind of stuff, and tolerance and all that kind of jazz. Article 27, right to participate in the cultural life of a community. Everyone has the right freely to participate in the cultural life of the community, to enjoy the arts, and to share in scientific advancement and its benefits. Everyone has the right to the protection of the moral and material interests resulting from any scientific, literary, or artistic production of which he is the author. This one is a very interesting one, specifically because of the latter part of the right. We all have the right to become a part of a community or culture. We all have the right to live our way regardless, as long as we are not harming someone else's way of life, and to enjoy the things that are a part of our culture, such as music, art, stories, writing, movies, all that kind of stuff, and the things that science provides us to live with. The second part of that right is basically copyright law. We're allowed to protect our own artistic creations from writing, music, art, movies, etc. In other words, copyright is a fundamental human right in accordance with this document, which is very interesting. If you think about it, copyright is a fundamental human right according to the UN. Article 28, right to a social order that articulates this document. Everyone is entitled to a social and international order in which the rights and freedoms set forth in this declaration can be fully realized. This one's more really just a say of saying, hey, this document, no one has the right to take these rights away from you, and everyone has a right to a country which enforces these rules, these basic human rights, these laws, and that we all have the right to live with these kind of rights. That's basically a way of saying it. It's just saying, like, this document, it's a big deal. Article 29, community duties essential to free and full development. Everyone has duties to the community in which alone the free and full development of his personality is possible. In the exercise of his rights and freedoms, everyone shall be subject only to such limitations as are determined by law solely for the purpose of securing due recognition and respect for the rights and freedoms of others, and of meeting the just requirements of morality, public order, and the general welfare in a democratic society. These rights and freedoms may in no case be exercised contrary to the purposes and principles of the United Nations. Simply put, this one just tells us that we have the duty to make sure that other people's rights are seen to. We have the right for our rights to be enforced by law and by society and our culture, and for others, we should protect others' rights and freedoms just as we would our own. And finally, last but not least, Article 30. Freedom from state or personal interference in the above rights. Nothing in this declaration may be interpreted as implying for any state, group, or person any right to engage in any activity or to perform any act aimed at the destruction of any of the rights and freedoms set forth herein. And lastly, this is just a roundabout way of saying that no one has the right to take our rights away. Same as about 2 or 3 of those other rights in the document. A lot of them are intertwined with each other for obvious reasons. But it's just a way of saying that no government, no person, no party has the right to take these rights away from us under any circumstance. Yeah, that's basically it. That's your 30 rights. Now, a few things that I want to end with at the end of this video is that of the 58 countries that participated in the UN at that time, 48 of those countries voted in favor of, 0 voted against it, 8 abstained from the vote, and the last 2 did not vote at all. Now, I'm not absolutely sure what abstaining and not voting, what the difference is, but with that being said, that's the case of who voted. You can have a look at the Wikipedia page to find out the list of all the people that actually voted for it, who abstained from it, and who didn't vote. With that being said, even though the treaty has been used as a basis for international law and diplomacy for well over 50 years, and has kind of become a customary part of international relations and international laws, but there are those that do not consider it, that consider it as a non-binding thing, and that it can't be used to enforce other countries to abide by the law or abide by these rights. There have been other countries that have just clearly stated that the document itself is not a part of domestic laws within countries. So if you go traveling, make sure you know which countries believe that and which don't, because you might just get into more bother than it's worth. So just be mindful of that. A lot of our laws in Western countries are associated with our rights, and as a result, it may seem that it's completely binding. If you're in the UN, it is, or at least it should be. The UN is kind of, you went into it, you signed it, you agreed it, you kind of have to abide by it. Otherwise, there'd be some kind of bad restrictions. But other than that, there are a few countries that don't believe it to be fully binding. So something to be aware of. With that being said, there are the 30 basic human laws in accordance with the UN document of 1948. Hope you enjoyed, and I hope you all know your rights now. Thank you very much for watching. I upload at least once a week. If you want to keep up to date with my videos, hit the subscribe button and hit the bell icon down below to keep up to date with all my videos. With that being said, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Good luck, guys.